friend of mine saw somebody biking, like cycling on the highway one day and was like, what the heck, right? Like, what is going on? And they were just like, that's weird. And they called a friend of ours who's a coach and, who does a lot of work in depth with internal control psychology. And he said, you need to call the police. And she's like, why? And he said, because that person might be suicidal. Right. And she was like, oh, and so she called. But the point about this is, oftentimes we look at people doing behaviors, not oftentimes, some of the times, I want to be very careful about my language. Sometimes we look at people doing behavior and we make assumptions about why they're doing that. Like if somebody crosses the road in front of jaywalks in front of my car, I'm like, what are you idiot? What are you doing? You're trying to get yourself killed? Well, we have this assumption that of course they're not, because people have this innate desire to live. And I know this is getting a little bit dark and deep kind of at the same time, like at the beginning, but the idea is there, well, we can't make assumptions about why people do what they do. Mm-hmm. So, I might have the desire to live at this moment in time, but that doesn't mean everyone does in that instance. Now let's take it to fitness. I might realize that not smoking is very healthy for me. And why would you smoke? That seems insane. But we know that there are some pros to smoking. If there were no pros to smoking, people wouldn't do it, right? If there were no pros to whatever behavior, to procrastination, to angering, to name any behavior, if there were no pros to it, people wouldn't do it. So having that knowledge is quite powerful.
Yeah.
Because we don't go, why are you doing this?
That was a big light bulb for me back a long time. Like the behaviors that they're performing are having some sort of a benefit to them. Otherwise, they would not be doing it. So no matter what it is, how destructive we might find the behavior, the result of the behavior, that behavior in that time is serving a purpose. Exactly. And people do it because it's working for them. It's getting to some end. And I have a hard time sort of explaining this to some people, especially fellow coaches sometimes, because they're like, they don't get it. Yeah. I'm like, and I remember reading a book called The Upside to Your Dark Side. And it was really about like embracing that side of things where you might be doing things that are not good, as some people might judge them, but it's benefiting you in some way. And there's a time and a place for the sort of acting out some of these needs and desires and stuff. So I think you're really good at speaking about that. So that's like big reason why I have you here today.
Well, it's funny is like, I love that language of good and bad behaviors, because often we reduce it down to that. And I'm really trying to get out of using the idea of good and bad behaviors. And I know that you've heard this before, but it's more about more effective and less effective behaviors.
Yes.
I would say like, what's the opposite of effective? And most people would say,
ineffective.
Well, there is no ineffective. It's less effective. If it was ineffective, again, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't repeat it over and over, right? Like, so even with ineffective behaviors, you're meeting some need, right? The thing is, you're probably throwing some other needs under the bus at the same time.